The ancient world held its breath, poised on the brink of a colossal confrontation destined to radically redraw the map of Hellenic history. An inevitable war was looming, threatening to engulf entire civilizations in the flames of conflict between the two titans of the era, Athens, the undisputed leader of the mighty Delian League, uniting countless city-states and colonies under its banner, and Sparta, the formidable head of the Peloponnesian League. This impending clash promised an unprecedented spectacle: on one side, an imposing, almost invincible naval fleet; on the other, one of the most disciplined and legendary infantry forces ever to march the earth. Even before this fateful storm broke, Athens had already etched its name in gold in the annals of history, achieving a crushing victory over the Persian invaders in the famed Battle of Marathon. 10 years later, when significantly superior and more formidable Persian forces again invaded Greek soil, they faced a series of serious setbacks. Their advance was halted at the heroic Battle of Thermopylae, where a mere 300 Spartans, whose bravery became proverbial, fought to their last breath, valiantly holding a narrow pass. Soon after, off the island of Salamis, the Persian fleet suffered a devastating defeat at the hands of skilled Athenian sailors, marking a turning point in the war. Finally, at Plataea, the Persian army was utterly routed on land, suffering catastrophic losses that drastically reduced its numbers, forcing it to abandon its ambitious plan of ultimately conquering Greece. For the subsequent 50 years, Athens and Sparta maintained a common anti-Persian stance, actively supporting any actions directed against the Persian Empire in the eastern Mediterranean. This unifying factor, surprisingly, allowed a fragile and temporary peace to be maintained between the two potential hegemons of Hellas. To ensure robust protection against the Persian naval threat and to continue the fight for the freedom of Greek cities, the Athenians established the Delian League. However, over time, as Athens extended its influence over the members of this defensive alliance, the coalition gradually transformed into a genuine empire, with Athens ruthlessly exacting tribute from its nominal allies. The resources obtained from these dependent states allowed Athens to flourish into a prosperous city, the envy of the entire Hellenic world, and to build an impressive fleet of 300 triremes, swift and agile warships. Each of these triremes was manned by a crew of 170 professional, highly skilled oarsmen, whose expertise ensured Athens' unparalleled supremacy at sea. But how long could this peace endure when one power grew ever stronger, and the other watched this growth with increasing apprehension? In the era preceding the Persian Wars, Corinth justly enjoyed a reputation as a leading naval power. However, the rise of Athens led to its fleet significantly surpassing Corinth's, tripling in size. Athens began actively instigating revolts in Corinthian colonies and threatening Corinth's vital trade routes. For 15 years, small but fierce skirmishes, known as the First Peloponnesian War, took place. In this conflict, Sparta opposed Athens, achieving a single, though inconclusive, victory over the Athenian army, while Athens continued to steadily build up its naval might. One of the most significant developments of that period was the extensive reconstruction of the Athenian walls, accompanied by the construction of a long causeway that securely connected Athens to its key port, Piraeus. This strategic structure guaranteed that Athens could receive uninterrupted supplies by sea, even if an enemy army invaded and ravaged the surrounding countryside and agricultural lands. This period of animosity concluded with the signing of the so-called 30 Years' Peace between the two city-states, which, however, lasted for less than half its intended duration. Despite the signed peace agreement, hostility between Athens and Corinth persisted. In 431 BC, Corinth succeeded in persuading Sparta and the Peloponnesian League to declare war on Athens, with the aim of ending the burgeoning Athenian Empire. The first phase of the Second Peloponnesian War, commonly referred to simply as the Peloponnesian War, is known as the Archidamian War. Sparta pursued a tactic of devastating the countryside around Athens, attempting to provoke a decisive battle. The Athenians, anticipating the Spartan strategy, organized a continuous flow of grain supplies from Egypt and colonies located on the Aegean and Black Sea coasts. The Athenian strategy involved blockading the Peloponnese from all trade and supplies, while simultaneously raiding Sparta's allies at opportune moments. In the confrontation between Athens and Sparta, the Athenians seemed to hold the advantage in this asymmetrical war of attrition, meticulously prepared by the far-sighted Athenian strategist Pericles. Rural inhabitants, seeking protection, flocked behind the mighty Athenian walls. In the initial phase of the war, this situation was foreseen, and prosperous Athens possessed sufficient food reserves to sustain the growing population. But disaster struck unexpectedly. Contaminated grain brought a plague that rapidly spread through the overcrowded city. Athens, inspired by Pericles' speeches, initially showed resilience. However, an estimated 1 in 4 Athenians, including Pericles himself and his sons, succumbed to the epidemic before its deadly march ceased. Amidst the calamity, mercenaries refused to fight for Athens, and even the Spartans suspended their military operations near the city, fearing contagion. Ironically, the Athenian blockade of the Peloponnese spared Sparta and its allies from the plague-infected grain. The surviving Athenians adopted more aggressive tactics, increasing raids and establishing fortified bases along the Peloponnesian coast. Helots, the Spartan slaves, whose numbers vastly exceeded those of their masters, were encouraged to flee to these outposts, putting pressure on Sparta to defend its territories. This period of the war concluded with the signing of the Peace of Nicias for 50 years, which, however, proved fragile, as both sides engaged in skirmishes from the outset, first through proxies, and then directly. In 415 BC, Athenian citizens devised an ambitious plan which they hoped would bring them unequivocal victory, the conquest of the wealthy city-state of Syracuse in Sicily. This city, alongside Athens and Carthage, played a significant role in Mediterranean trade. However, the expedition, led by the young and energetic Athenian politician Alcibiades, proved to be a complete failure. During this campaign, Athens lost over 10,000 hoplites and 2/3 of its fleet. And while ships could be rebuilt, the loss of 30,000 experienced oarsmen, whose skills were irreplaceable, was an irreparable blow. Following this devastating catastrophe, a series of misfortunes ensued. Sparta gained the upper hand, freeing a considerable number of 20,000 Athenian slaves toiling in the silver mines, which delivered a significant shock to Athens' financial system. In response to these losses, Athens was forced to increase tributes from its subjects, sparking a general revolt in Ionia, after which the final phase of the war was named. The Athenian general Alcibiades, fearing severe punishment for his failure in Sicily, chose a treacherous path and defected to Sparta to fight against his recent compatriots. At the same time, Sparta began receiving generous financial subsidies from the Persian Empire, which viewed the Athenian Empire as a dangerous adversary to its interests. Thanks to this substantial financial backing, Sparta was able to significantly expand its fleet and, acting in concert with its Corinthian allies, inflicted a crushing defeat on the Athenian fleet at the Battle of Aegospotami. The Athenian state, stripped of its naval power and virtually without a fleet, was soon besieged by Spartan forces and, lacking the strength to resist, promptly surrendered to the enemy. Nevertheless, Sparta's dominion over the Hellenic world proved surprisingly fleeting. The main reason lay in the fact that its most valuable asset, the renowned Spartan warriors, became scarce. Their numbers were insufficient to effectively govern a vast empire and maintain its unity. As a result, after a series of minor military confrontations that followed the end of the Peloponnesian War, Philip of Macedon, father of the future great commander Alexander the Great, skillfully exploited this vulnerability, managing to subdue the weary and fragmented Greek city-states.